Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Wake the Future. So Erica and I were just having a conversation in our kitchen a couple of days ago, which is the whole spirit of Wake the Future. And we started talking about what's happening in the cultural consciousness, what's happening in the cultural zeitgeist when it comes to things like comedy and music and pop culture and entertainment. And just kind of discussing why certain things or certain people or certain acts are increasingly popular. And we started to think about the fact that what's happening in society is really having a profound impact. There's a through line with the kind of things that are resonating with people today. And it's no different, frankly, than when you and I were kids in the 80s and 90s. All of those kind of halcyon days that we remember.
All of this started because Jared was online. He was watching a clip of the comic Nick Bargatze and was going on. He was like, I don't really find him funny, but everybody else does. And we have all of these friends who are seeing him like fill arenas. They're even traveling to go see him. And Jared said to me, he was like, what is the thing? So of course, like I'm putting on my nerdy brain, pretending like I'm like a deep psychologist here. And I'm like, well, actually, when you think about it, when you peel back the layers.
Yeah, you always put that layer of like, well, it might be reflective of something happening societally. And I love that. So you kind of temper out my like visceral response with nerdiness.
Yes, that's how we
and it's kind of how we work
in life.
It's kind of how we work. But like, yes, to your point, this all started because, and we've had this conversation in the context of what's popular in music, certainly. So we're going to talk about the different layers of this for a few minutes. But basically, this started because I see Nate Bargatze everywhere. He's all over my social media feeds. We know friends who go see him when he's at arena shows here and nearby. Yeah. He's hosted SNL twice. I think he might have hosted the Emmys. And here's the thing, like, humor and comedy is subjective. Don't get me wrong. So 8 people might find someone funny and 2 may not, or vice versa.
I was saying, I'm like, okay, so despite what's happening generationally, let's look at, and you kind of framed it as the cultural zeitgeist.
It's
right?
what
it's
it
like,
is. Yeah.
What is happening out there in like the broader world, and what is it touching on? And we were talking about the fact that there's a relatability, there's an authenticity, and I think given everything with the pace of change, AI, the fact that people are tired, disoriented, confused, bombarded. Last week, we talked about the rise of popcorn brain and that generations are not only on multiple devices, but are like living in all of these parallel realities. They're in a million different places. They can't focus. And I almost feel like this type of comedy, and we'll also talk about kind of the parallel rise of country music. It's almost like a refuge. I think that people see themselves in it. I think as people are craving a deeper sense of humanity, as people are trying to grasp onto something, that in a world of fake, when music is increasingly auto-tuned, in a world where there's so much political polarization, in a world of mistis and malinformation, all of these things, all of these, again, these WTF moments, then they can see themselves, whether it is in the simplicity of it, whether it is in the authenticity, but I think it's the humanness of a lot of it that people are gravitating to.
And I mean, I tend to agree with a lot of that. I think we have to back up the truck for a second. So a lot of people watching this might know who we're talking about. Some people may have no clue. This is a style of comedy which is very much grounded in the everyman. It's like everyday observations. It's supposed to be very G-rated, so it's family appropriate, nothing offensive, no curse words. And he plays a character. It's even the name of his tour. He plays like a dumb character. It's sort of like a dumber version of who he probably is in real life, where he's like, he does dumb things and silly observations about his life with his kids and his wife. And, the guy's now made a movie. And the thing about it is that, again, like subjectively, I watch this and I'm like, okay, mild chuckle. If I saw this guy at an open mic night, I might think he was one of the better comedians at a local open mic night, but he's now selling out arenas. So there's something happening here. So you just made the point that we're living in this fast-paced world. Everything is confusing. Everything is intense. A lot of younger people came off of things like COVID, where their entire lives got basically thrown out of whack and they missed big foundational milestones. And so I think there is this kind of like bedrock, this grounding in pop culture and comedy and in music, which is more familiar, it's safe, it has familiar themes, it has comforting themes. And so there is definitely something to that. But I also think that we have to talk about what goes along with that. So you have a guy like this, and I cut my teeth and came of age in the 1980s when everything was about excess and greed and over the top and real masculinity and machismo and charisma. And I see this guy and I see anti-charisma. I see someone on stage who, to me, there's no real interesting physical comedy. He doesn't have a great presence. And to me, that's almost antithetical to someone that would make great comedy, yet it resonates with everybody.
Well, it's two different values, right? So you're talking about aspirational versus kind of authentic / relatable / achievable.
Yeah.
And I think that now aspiration is such a tricky thing because who do you aspire to be like?
Yeah.
At a time when, we haven't really dug into this, but certain facets of masculinity, right? That has become very polarized. Everything politically has become polarized. There's no just one hallmark of what it is to aspire to be an X, Y, or Z. I think that, again, in these times when people just want that comfort, they want that security blanket, they go more towards relatability than something where it's like, oh, I want to be just like that.
Well, so here's the thing, and I think, you and I in a lot of these videos, we agree and we don't agree. So I agree with that, but also remember, like many years ago, for one of our corporate retreats, we went out to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and we actually had a lecture led by a couple of people who were very prominent leading researchers in the science of humor. And they were talking about the fact that humor resides in the same part of the brain as fear. So a lot of what gets you to laugh at jokes is a feeling of surprise or uncomfortability, which is why historically more offensive comics who might push the envelope a little bit generate some of the biggest laughs. I mean, and again, I go back to people like George Carlin, who I thought was not only really observational and hysterical, but was offensive and like pushed the envelope. I happen to like Andrew Dice Clay. Andrew Dice Clay would get canceled within -5 seconds today because the guy said all of the most inappropriate things. Eddie Murphy Raw, leading up to Chris Rock, Rodney Dangerfield. And now you have a guy like Nate Bargatze, who to me is the vanilla version of Sebastian Maniscalco, who I think is hysterical.
But don't you think it's psychological safety? Don't you think at a time when everyone is tiptoeing, or they're like, I don't want to do the wrong thing, I don't want to laugh at the wrong thing, there is a comfort in, like, I can laugh at any of this because it's all safe.
Or being like, this guy reminds me of Dad Next Door, like making observations about suburban life.
That's the relatability part of this.
But it's also a safety.
You're talking about the neurological part of this. And if these two things reside in the same part of the brain,
it's interesting.
I think it's almost like we're overriding our kind of neurowiring to be like, is it okay to laugh? And then these sorts of comics are like, no, I can laugh at everything. It's all pretty benign. It's all pretty safe. It's what you're calling vanilla. But again, I think it's representative of like a place that a lot of people feel more comfortable dwelling in.
Maybe part of it is I have to realize maybe I'm the anomaly here. Maybe I'm looking for something that the average person now is not looking for. And that's okay. We don't all have to be same. Vanilla might be the wrong word here. I think some of it might be more basic.
But again, so many, just real quick, like a lot of comedians will not play on college campuses anymore.
True.
Because those have become such hotbeds for, like, again, polarized political views.
Well, it's wokeness, it's political correctness, it's not being able to get away with anything anymore. Even someone as harmless as Seinfeld.
We were just talking about Seinfeld. Seinfeld can't show up on a college campus.
Seinfeld pulled away from college campuses. I mean, you want to talk about someone who has some of the most harmless comedy ever. The guy is a total nebbish, and he couldn't do it anymore. So it is a sign of the times.
You just had a lot of people looking up what the word nebbish means.
It started, that's fine. I don't even know the proper spelling. But this goes beyond comedy. This just started because we were talking about comedy in our kitchen the other day. And I was like, I don't get the thing with this guy. I love Sebastian Maniscalco, another contemporary comedian. I think he's got the charisma, the physical comedy, the intonation to make me laugh no matter what he says. I didn't see it with this guy, and you started telling me, no, this is definitely a sign of what's happening culturally. The zeitgeist, nerdy word, but it's the cultural consciousness. It is the way the way the winds are blowing right now, societally with technology, but it happens in music. We've had this conversation with a lot of people we know about why is country music so popular these days. Now, here's the thing, and again, this is subjective. And it's not just about, do you like it, do you not like it? But country music, in many ways, the themes and the way it sounds, it hasn't evolved all that much in the last 20, 30 years since we were young. And so while rock music was constantly pressured to evolve, and rock music in many ways has become obsolete in the mainstream, and even hip hop, which took over the airwaves for about 20 years, has evolved tremendously, and also is sort of facing its own reckoning. Country has had a resurgence and is now everywhere you go. You and I live in the Northeast.
Those who listen to country music would say that it has evolved. But I think, again, you peel back all of these layers and you look at what it is actually driving towards. And I think what it is driving towards is an increased need for storytelling, human storytelling. I think it's evolved because, yes, there are two things happening simultaneously. One is kind of this halcyon past, right? It's like a hearkening back to whether it's rural America, towns, simplicity, your pickup truck, family, more traditional definitions of
it's traditional
family.
Themes. It's still the case.
Yes, of course it's traditional themes. I think the country music that's resonating now is also having the traditional themes as a bedrock, and then the country singers who are just like being more raw about their experiences. Who is it? Like Jelly Roll has done some like darker music talking about like his own sobriety and all of these different things. I think the one like unifying moment in this is, again, a lot of people are searching for just real human moments. real human stories that aren't vulgar, aren't of like a certain subgenre, uh, don't have a lot of curse words in them. So you talk about the fact that we were talking to family about this. So like July 4th, we talked about how we were with Jared's family. We're sitting on the beach, the portable speakers there, country music is on. I looked to Jared's cousin's daughter. She's 24, 25. And I was like, what is the thing with this? Right? It's like, when I was in my mid 20s, we were listening to like Ja Rule. That's definitely dating me.
No, I mean, well, it
And
is
it was
dating
like
you.
50 Cent.
It is
with
dating
a
you,
little
but
Jay-Z.
I mean, admittedly, I think that was far better than what's going on now.
Yes,
But again,
but I was like, I'm gonna nerd out for 5 minutes. Bear with me, and then we can go back to having our White Claws. What is it? Like, what is it about this music? Why? I was like, it is all across your generation, regardless of geography. Like, what is the thing? And what she said was so interesting. And you and I are like, oh my God, we have to bring this up on a
and
Wake Up
that's
Future
why we're talking
episode.
about this now in part. Yeah.
Yes. And she was like, so many people in my generation are so anxious and like so on edge about so many things in their lives. She's like, it just gives us a sense of calm. Like, it feels calming. We don't have to think about it. It's just kind of like a.
There are a couple of things being left out of these stories. Number one, when we get together with family for July 4th at the beach, it is in New Jersey. We're not talking about going to Nashville. We're not talking about going to Florida. This is in New Jersey, this is happening. We live in the Northeast United States, where historically country music, this was not a country music stronghold. So that's relevant here, because when you see young people in particular gravitating to country music in parts of the world like this, it shows that there is a real cultural shift happening. We obviously know that there's a resurgence of religion in this country, and a lot of it, I think, is in response to all of these other crazy variables. And it does start to explain why more kind of basic suburban dad type of comedians who are doing things in a sort of more harmless manner, G-rated manner, familiar manner, might be gaining resonance. And of course, we can see this in all aspects of entertainment and pop culture right now. And so yes, this in some ways is a cultural metabolic response, I think, to all of this stuff that's happening out there. And it could be what's happening with AI and the future of jobs. It could be what's happening with climate, all of the things that are leading to anxiety, not just in young people, but young people are always the easiest ones to talk about here because they are the generational flashpoint. And oh, by the way, they're the ones who drive a lot of the cultural trends.
So I think this actually plays into our A+I framework, because when you think about it, there's a lot of the identity piece here. And I think as people are craving and like almost, they want like a grounding sense of who they are, a sense of community. There is almost like a, throw your arm around someone, listen to this music, sing along to it, almost like campfire feel to it. That makes people feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And the other thing I think we have to make note of here, and this cuts across racial and ethnic lines. When it comes to country music, as an example, country music used to be, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, probably 97% of the audience was historically white. And now country music has crossed over those ethnic and racial lines. And there are many prominent.
And generational lines. Like my grandfather used to listen to Patsy Cline, and I'm like, oh, country music is for.
Well, country. So there's two things happening here. First of all, I think a lot of prominent artists, African American artists and otherwise, have gotten involved in country music. So you have like Shabuzi, who I'm not even really familiar with. You taught me about this last year. But Beyonce's gotten involved in country music. A lot of mainstream artists have started to cross over. So the demographic appeal has changed dramatically. And then you talk about the fact that it used to be kind of in, our grandparents listened to country music, Patsy Cline. Well, this is part of what I was saying before, which is that country music seems to transcend what has afflicted other mainstream forms of music, and that it has survived. Rock music, I mean, all of us who are rock music fans lament effectively what has been the death of contemporary rock music. It doesn't really exist anymore. You don't really see mainstream rock bands anymore.
What Jared is not saying is he wants to bring back all 80s and early 90s hair bands.
I do. I absolutely do.
And vicariously living through them.
I'm vicarious. I'm not living through anything vicariously. I love my hair. So
it's making me want to break out into some Destiny's Child.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
What does that have to do with country?
I'm a survivor. No?
But that doesn't, it's not even country music.
Oh, I know, but you mentioned Beyonce.
Okay, fair enough. As we sit here and we talk about the subjectivity of comedy and of music and of pop culture, we are definitely seeing something happening culturally which is reflective of shifting sentiment, possibly some anxiety, definitely stuff happening generationally.
And I think we also see a parallel rise with all of the superhero movies, all of the supernatural. There's almost this push and pull between the need for escapism and the need for relatability.
I'm glad you brought up superhero movies because for many years, everyone was talking about why these were becoming so popular.
Yeah.
And here's the common thread between that and the explanation you've given here today about why some of these more familiar, simple themes have become are increasingly popular. Superhero movies at their core are childlike. Those superheroes comic books were originally marketed towards children,
Yeah.
towards teens. So the fact that for a couple of decades now adults have gravitated to them as escapism means that there is something in simplicity, innocence, and things that are, again, less vulgar, almost less intensely adult, and a little bit more just like familiar,
Again,
conventional.
it's these two extremes. I
Yeah.
think it is hearkening back to almost the most simplistic versions of
Yeah,
humanity,
yeah,
and at the same time being superhuman, like just almost catapulting or leapfrogging all
Yeah.
of our current definitions of humanity, which are in a complete state of flux with everything in the world, everything with AI, everything that we talk about. Okay, this is almost this idealized vision of us in a distant future that might not ever exist.
Yeah.
But it is fun and escapist to think about.
Well, I mean, this is great. Listen, I'm not after this going to go and watch Nate Bargatze for an hour and think that he's hysterical. Nothing's going to change there. I'm going to go back to watching American Pie and Revenge of the Nerds and listening to Andrew Dice Clay, all things and which would be canceled within about 4 seconds today. That's just me. But I do appreciate that we are talking about putting a little bit of a different perspective around this. This has been great today because I love having these conversations that kind of blur the boundary between just the fun and the observational and the serious. So thank you for putting that context around this today. As always, thank all of you for joining us. Stay tuned for our next episode coming out next Tuesday. As always, please go to our new website, wakethefuture.com, and sign up for our mailing list. And please like, subscribe, join our community, and we'll see you guys soon.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, like, follow, and subscribe to stay ahead of what's next. I'm Erica Orange.
And I'm Jared Weiner. Thanks for waking the future with us. We'll see you next time.